Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and today I'm going to interview Noah Rahimzadeh. He has helped multiple marketing technology companies scale through partnerships, and today he leads partnerships at the leading order tracking platform for Shopify merchants, Malomo. Before talking to him, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. As you probably noticed already, customer acquisition costs are going up, right? There's lack of tracking, attribution is driving you nuts, and audience sizes are getting smaller after the iOS 14 update. If that wasn't enough, there are other factors such as the recession and supply chain issues making harder than ever to grow your e-commerce brand. That's why we need to understand that it's really important to level up the marketing and design the solid strategy as what used to work doesn't anymore. At BSR Digital, we have been helping countless e-commerce brands that wanted to scale their business to a next level through paid ads and email marketing for over a decade. To learn more, you can visit us at bsrdigital.com, and you can also email us at hello@bsrdigital.com. Now, as promised, I have Noah here with me. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Brian. This is it's been a long time coming. I think we rescheduled once or twice. So happy to be here today. And that couldn't have been a more awesome and foreshadowing little sponsorship spot there, talking about retention and acquisition. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And by the way, did I get your last name right?
You crushed it much better than most on their first time. So great work.
Thank you. Thank you. So please, why don't you start by telling the audience more about you, your background, your story?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for having me. I always like to tell the story of my background because it leads me right up until what I'm doing here, running partnerships at Malomo today. So I went to school, small state school here in Indiana called Ball State. I like to refer to it as Harvard of the Midwest. That's not true at all. Uh, went there for entrepreneurship. So when I graduated, actually started a health IT company out of college with a co-founder of mine. Neither of us were technical at all. So we had to go outsource development of our application. And we landed on a small development shop in Indianapolis called Sticks and Leaves. Sticks and Leaves did custom app work like they were doing for us, and they were fantastic, helped us out with some early market validation, built us wireframes, even went on some early sales calls with us. But while they were building custom apps for folks like us at Safekeeping, which is what our company was called, they were also working with Shopify merchants at the same time. So that was sort of a separate service that they offered at their agency. In working with Shopify merchants, they realized this challenge of post-purchase experiences with a couple of their merchants. Basically, what they found is that, brands do all of this hard work to get folks on the site for the first time, get them to buy for the first time. Everything up until that point is super tailored and on brand and personalized to that user as much as possible. But then as soon as a customer buys, everything kind of goes out the window. You get generic emails, you get sent to a generic order tracking page on a UPS or a FedEx page. And so the founders at Sticks and Leaves thought that there had to be a better way. So they sort of solved this problem for a couple of their merchants ad hoc. And in that process, realized this must be a challenge for all Shopify merchants. And so over time, as they sort of built out the experiences for more and more merchants, they inevitably sort of shut down the agency and built out the platform that is Malomo today. So they officially did that in 2018. I left the company that I co-founded around the same time. And as you mentioned, Brian, in your great intro, helped a couple other enterprise MarTech companies scale their companies through partnerships. But I remained close with the founders of Malomo since they started the company, since we stopped working together all those years ago. And when Yao, our CEO, called me about a year ago, the timing was just right for me finally to make the move back to the startup world and join him in his mission to create the leading order tracking platform in the Shopify ecosystem. So that's what I'm doing today. I head up partnerships and run partnerships and business development for Malomo.
That's awesome. So I know that we chat here on the podcast with many e-commerce founders and directors, and I know you talk with a lot of them as well. So I don't know if you agree with what I'm going to say, but everyone is seems like it's focused on getting new customers. Although in the last year or so, I can tell that even more and more e-commerce founders and directors are focused also on the retention side because they see that the acquisition costs are going up. And unless they do something on the retention side, things are not going to work as expected, right? But we have retention on one hand, we have acquisition on the other one, but there's something in between, which is what happens right after somebody buys. And that's exactly what you do at Malomo. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think this is overlooked? And why do you think it's so important that e-commerce brands change that situation?
Yeah, fantastic question. We could go into a lot of different subtopics on it, I think, Brian. So the question of why it's so important is pretty simple when you look at the data. 84% of customers will not return to a brand after just one bad shipping experience. So if you think about what that means, anything from a carrier, a UPS or a FedEx misplacing a package, or a package or an order getting stalled in fulfillment with your 3PL, or if you're self-fulfilling, at your own facility or whatever that may be, all the way to what does the tracking experience actually look like for the customer? Are you proactively notifying customers in the event that there is some sort of delay? What does the actual tracking itself look like? Is it branded and on site and personalized to that user? Or is it just a generic, tracking link that goes to a UPS page with no personalization and no branding whatsoever? So when you think about that problem of 84% not returning after one bad shipping experience, it sort of puts into context how important it is to provide a great post-purchase experience for your consumer. Kind of piggybacking off of what you said about, retention becoming more important as acquisition costs get higher. And that's for so many reasons, right? Like, just off the top of my head, iOS privacy changes, inflation, supply chain disruption, like I just talked about. Now that we're, fully, or for the most part, fully out of the pandemic, the return of in-person shopping. There's so many factors that sort of go into rising acquisition costs for e-commerce merchants. That is also shown very clearly in the data. One of the stats that I've quoted recently on a webinar I did was in 2013, I believe the year was 2013, the average e-commerce brand lost $9 for every new merchant that they acquired. So lost a little bit of money, but could easily make that up in most cases on the second purchase. Today, 10 years later, that number of $9 lost on every new customer acquisition has grown to $29. So over the last 10 years, the amount of money brands are losing on the first purchase for a new customer has grown 3x. Over that same time period, the amount of money that a brand earns on a repeat purchase has gone up 33%. So you kind of see in the data, which is much easier to show in a graph than me talking it through, how important retention has become with the way that the world has shifted over the last 10 years, making the post-purchase experience even more crucial than it's ever been before. Because if you're losing 84% of your customers who have one bad shipping experience, you're not taking accountability and control of that as a brand. You're likely losing money on those customers because it takes so much to finally break even and then make new customers profitable today.
You mentioned really interesting stats. I didn't know about those. And you also mentioned personalization, how brands can personalize the post-purchase experience. Can you please break that down? What can
Yeah.
they personalize specifically? Is it
Yeah.
only about the design, or can they do something more actionable for them?
Yeah. Yeah. Another great question. So, getting a little bit tactical here, Brian, I love that. So the first thing that I'll just say about that is there's so much more you can do than brand and design. But if you simply start sending your customers almost every single one of them who buys from you, who goes to track their package, back to your site rather than a UPS or a FedEx page to track their order, and you take back control of that, that is a huge win in and of itself. Another stat I'll throw out at you, these are top of mind because I've been talking about them a lot this week. 15% of all e-commerce web traffic, particularly, I should say, in the Shopify ecosystem, hits the order tracking page. So most brands are sending that 15% of their web traffic still to a UPS or a FedEx page. By leveraging a tool like Malomo, and there's other options, than us, but we obviously like to tout ourselves as the best in class. You recapture that 15%. So just to sort of summarize what that looks like, somebody goes to buy their package and you send them an email, whether that's out of Shopify or Klaviyo or whatever, and we can help with that as well. When they go to track their package from that email, if you're sending them to a UPS page, you are giving up 15% of your web traffic. So simply by redirecting them from that email back to your site, you regain that 15%. That in and of itself is a win. But now let's think about, okay, now that we're back on the site, what can we do to maximize that traffic that we've just recaptured? Aside from branding, there's a ton you can do. So obviously, first and foremost, we want to show our customers exactly where that package is and when it'll arrive. So that'll always be front and center, top of the page. But below that, we have the opportunity to do really anything that we want because of the way that order tracking through Malomo sort of natively fits in the Shopify ecosystem and within Shopify themes. Whatever you're doing on the rest of your e-commerce store, you can also leverage on your e-commerce page or on your order tracking page. So for example, a very low-hanging fruit, great opportunity for brands is to use that opportunity to drive repeat purchases. So while the package is on the way, that these customers are really excited about your brand, right? They're tracking their order. They go to a branded experience that's, like I said earlier, a much better up level than a UPS or a FedEx page. But now that they're there, why not show them products based on what they purchased that would complement that item really well? So for example, you bought this shirt and you're a man. Let's show some pants that go well with our shirt collection. Or you bought these pots and pans. Why don't we show our other kitchen utensils that can go really well with the pots and pans that you just purchased? And the great thing about it is because we just live on the Shopify page, you're on your own site, you can leverage any of the tools that you already have. So in this example, one of our preferred partners for product recommendations is Rebuy. We have 50 plus merchants leveraging Rebuy to surface personalized product recommendations on their order tracking page. And so that's just one example, and I can go into a lot more examples of how you can leverage that, again, that 15% that you've just recaptured to drive repeat purchases. Another stat to throw at you, Brian, one that I think blew my mind most when I started at Malomo is that we see across the board anyway from our data, 3% of customers will buy again while an item is on the way to their door. So they haven't even gotten this item. They haven't even gotten this item, right? But if you serve them personalized product recommendations or at least tailored product recommendations, 3% of them are likely to buy again or will buy again while that package is being delivered to them. What that can look like for some of our merchants, especially on the larger end, doing multiple orders with high AOV, is high six figures. Some of our merchants even do millions of dollars a year just from their tracking page. And so that's really the opportunity cost of sending your customers to a UPS or a FedEx or any carrier's page rather than back to your site.
I mean, it's crazy how we oftentimes don't value things that are actually really valuable and that are making us leave money on the table. In this case, we are, if you think this, as you said, you're giving away 15% or so of your traffic to UPS or any other service that don't care about, doing something else with your traffic, but you can do something about it. And it's not it's not only to keep people on your website, but it's also to make the most out of it and try to keep adding value to them and have them buy more stuff they might need from your brand. So why do you think some brands are still not doing this or something like this?
Yeah, yeah. I'm perplexed by it too, but I think the biggest thing is just education around the value of this. Brands have been sending their customers to a carrier's tracking page since the, dawn of the e-commerce era. And frankly, it's just an area in the customer journey that isn't front and center like a lot of the other, aspects in the customer journey. So most brands, I would say, still don't even realize the opportunity that they're missing out on, right? By sending their customers to a UPS or a FedEx page, just because it hasn't been a big area of focus. It's not talked about yet enough. That's why I try to do as many of these things as I can to sort of evangelize the opportunity that brands are missing out on. And so thank you again for the opportunity. But I think I think at the end of the day, it comes down to education, and just making brands aware of this sort of gold mine, right? That is just sitting right in front of them for them to recapture. I think the other thing is, just like everything else, when brands evaluate new tools, new tech, they think the first thing a lot of brands think, especially operators, they think, well, man, this is probably going to take a long time. I've got to learn a completely new system, right? I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the team. I don't have the expertise. The nice thing about what we offer is it works natively within the tools that our brands already use. So you don't have to learn Malomo. You just have to know how to create a Shopify page or have an agency that knows how to create a Shopify page. We give you the tools to work within the platforms that you're already familiar with to recapture this order tracking aspect of the customer journey. Same thing for email and SMS. You don't send emails, our customers don't send emails and SMSs out of our platform. They use the platforms that they're already working in, Klaviyo, Attentive, PostScript. So we just give them the tools to up-level their post-purchase experience. And the real value of the Malomo platform itself, outside of sort of providing the backend that powers all of that, is the data that we have access to. So we obviously capture all of this logistics data, all of the shipping data from the carriers, and then we're able to help you make it better informed decisions about what carriers you want to leverage based on, are your carriers hitting their SLAs? Is there one carrier maybe that you're leveraging who constantly has issues? Maybe you want to move away from them next year. If a package is delayed, the data that we're capturing also allows us to send proactive communications to our customers, right? So that they're not creating a "where's my order" ticket, the number one cause of customer support tickets in e-commerce. So we're reducing that as well through the data that we're able to leverage through what we capture from the carriers. So that's really the value of the platform. But in terms of learning a whole new system, we don't do that at all. We let you work directly within the platforms that you're already familiar with, that you know and love. And so in terms of education and like bandwidth and all of that stuff, super low effort to get started. And so for that reason, Brian, I think there aren't really very many good reasons why a brand wouldn't be leveraging a Malomo or, one of our competitors if for any reason they prefer them.
Yeah, and if you all listening or watching this, if you think about it, the same reason you you used for setting up your Klaviyo or your email and SMS marketing game, the same thing happens here. You did that to recover 20 to 30% more or less, of your lost sales. This is, or to add, more revenue. This is the same thing. I guess it depends on the industry and many other factors, but I guess your post-purchase email sequence doesn't start right after they buy. Probably starts after they receive the package, depending on your brand. So this is something in between where you can actually get more money, and as Noah said, get them to buy more than once, even before they receive the first product. Right? That's crazy.
Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And on the note of, email and SMS, I'm glad that you brought that up specifically. The typical journey, similar to what I talked about in terms of sending your customers to a UPS or a FedEx page and away from your site. For the messaging component with Shopify merchants, what they have access to out of the box is 4 generic emails that go out from Shopify. We help our merchants move away from Shopify for those transactional messages. So we move them from Shopify to Klaviyo, assuming that a brand is on Klaviyo. Almost all of our merchants are. And by doing that, one, they're transactional messages. So we know they're going to get opened at a super high rate, right? Because of that, we want to make sure that not only is the tracking page on brand and personalized, we want to make sure that all of the communications are as well. So with email, we're going to be able to brand that email just like everything else that you've done on the acquisition side to be branded, personalized, and all that good stuff. We're going to be able to send proactive communications like I talked about earlier. Even though these are transactional messages, brands can slip in a little bit of marketing content toward the bottom. So much more flexibility that you have by turning off your Shopify out of the box transactional shipping notifications and moving them over to Klaviyo or an SMS platform like Attentive or Postscript.
Yeah, that's interesting. And besides, helping brands increase revenue and many other things, it's all about making their lives easier. I mean, customers' life easier, right? By having a clearer landing page, like more visibility about the tracking. And I know you have recently taken that to the next level with a partnership to make their life easier with regards to things like returns and exchange. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I'm so happy you asked about it because I know this probably won't get released for a month or two, but we're recording on Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, Brian. Yes, just today we launched our Loop integration. Loop is the leading returns and exchanges platform in the Shopify ecosystem. They pride themselves on converting what would be a return into an exchange. And because they do that, they keep a lot of their merchants' revenue in-house with the brand rather than having to pay a customer back, refund their money, whether that be cash refund or store credit through a return. So whole idea of Loop that they do an amazing job of is help brands keep return revenue by converting returns to exchanges. That's why we chose them, and I can talk a little bit about why they chose us, but why we chose them to launch this first of its kind integration with. So what our Loop integration does is basically allows, Brian, to your point, customers a much more seamless journey for returns and exchanges. So the typical process today, when you buy something online, you don't like it, you realize you've made an error in the order, or you get it and you try it on and it doesn't fit, whatever the issue may be. You have to go to the site. You got to find that button that says start or return or exchange. Sometimes you have to read like a frequently asked questions, page just to figure out how to return something. You've got to type in your order number or your email to look up your order and then select all the items that you want to return or exchange. We have simplified that tenfold. So from our Malomo tracking pages, there will be a little button now for merchants leveraging Loop that says initiate a return or exchange. Well, right from there, we already know who you are and what you've purchased. So instead of having to, first and foremost, even find where to start a return or exchange, that will be front and center. Once you start the process, we already know what items you have. So no need to find your, do your order lookup or anything like that. You can select the items that you want to return or exchange. Again, Loop is going to push for exchanges over returns so that brands can keep that revenue. And once a customer initiates that return or exchange, they'll just like they do track their orders via Malomo on the direct side. If they exchange something, they'll be able to track the order back to the brand, the initial order, and then their new item, they'll be able to track back to them. If it's just a return, they track their order back to the brand so that they know when that refund or the store credit will hit their account. Just providing, a much fuller end-to-end experience for all things post-purchase, now with the addition of returns or exchanges via Loop as well.
That's awesome. Interesting. So Noah, I wanted to thank you for being here in the show. You delivered a lot of value to the audience, so I really appreciate that. To wrap up, it's something I like to ask my guests. It's if you have any favorite books to recommend to the audience, we put the list in 2022 of the top books mentioned here in the show, and we are going to do the same thing this year. So no pressure, but if you have any, we will add that to the list. Otherwise, you can feel free to mention someone in the industry that you admire.
Yeah, I could probably do both.
So great.
I'm a big sucker for social psychology. I think that it's helped me tremendously throughout my career, just like understanding human nature, how humans make decisions, how to influence people at the end of the day for the better, right? I think there's a big difference between influence and manipulation, frankly, but all in good nature. But one of my favorite books on that is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm sure that you've heard that one before, Brian. It's a popular one. It's one of the best business books I've ever met by far, but also more than that, just like a life book, right? Like maintaining and building relationships. It's been tremendously helpful for that. Since then, I've read 5 or 6 other books on social psychology. Last year, I think I read 4 alone. I just read the book. It's just called Influence by Robert Cialdini. That was great. Very foundational. Influence is Your Superpower is one that I read before that. Also a great book. So big on social psychology, as you can tell, probably. And then in terms of folks to follow in the space, Ryan, Fit Growth Machine, great podcast and one that we listen to. We have our own podcast called Retention Chronicles, believe it or not, that we like to shout out as well. But other folks in the space, Nick Sharma, I read his newsletter every week. He's fantastic, great partner of Malomo's as well. Brandon Amoroso at Electric Marketing also has a fantastic newsletter and a fantastic podcast. Ari Murray is also at Nick Sharma's company as their head of growth. She has her own newsletter, own podcast. So I follow all 3 of their content weekly. Highly recommend it for anybody in the e-commerce space.
That's great. Thanks for all the information. I've been taking notes like crazy while you were talking. So as you know, everyone, every resource that mentioned here, any books or people that Noah mentioned will be on fitgrowthmachine.com. After you find this episode, you will find all the show notes there, including these books and people he mentioned. I had a lot of fun. Noah, thanks for being here again. Where can people go to learn more about you and Malomo?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily, Noah Rahimzadeh. I don't think there are any other Noah Rahimzadehs on LinkedIn, last I checked.
I don't think so.
Um,
If they can write the last name, right?
right, if they can write the last name. I think it'll probably be listed on the show title, so
Noah
that
Malomo, I think will be an easier search, right?
right. Yes, Noah Malomo, you'll find me there. That's a great call out, Brian. And then website gomalomo.com.
Awesome. Again, the LinkedIn, the URL to his LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes as always. That will make your life easier when looking for, Noah. But yeah, thank you again, man. You've been great. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Enjoyed it.